You're live.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the regularly scheduled Finance Committee meeting on February 19th, 2025. And present for our meeting are, let's see, we have present Councillor Fournier and Councillor Dean and myself, Councillor Fish. And at the table is also our Finance Director, David Little. Other councillors present, I apologize, or Councillor
Yes.
Mallett, Councillor Pelletier. And did I forget anyone? Councillor Haas? Councillor Leonard, yes, apologize.
Sorry. I was told Jose was online, but I don't see him out there. Our first item tonight is consent agenda. The city has a standing policy that allows our fleet director to purchase used vehicles when it is deemed in the best interest of the city to purchase a used vehicle versus a new vehicle. And he has the authority to go ahead and move forward with those purchases due to obviously if we wait, look for permission first or go out to bid for used purchases, those vehicles may not be there anymore. So we purchase them, we bring them to a consent agenda item on committee for retroactive approval. That was done. They purchased a step van for the airport. It's a 2017 for $55,135. They had budgeted $80,000 for that purchase. It is replacing a 1993 step van that we will sell at our annual auction. So we're looking for permission to approve that purchase after the fact.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second. Any questions or comments?
Thank you. Our next item under regular bids is organizational assessment for the Parks and Recreation Department. We did go out to bid. We received 3 bids for the organizational assessment. The bids ranged from $29,735 to $59,000. The local firm of Barry Dunn McNeil and Parker was the low bidder at $29,735. Included in the Parks and Rec approved capital budget was $20,000 for this assessment. But they're able to absorb the additional $9,000 within their various divisional operational budgets. So looking for approval to move forward with Barry Dunn McNeil and Parker for $29,735 for an organizational assessment of Parks and Rec.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Second one? Second. Thank you.
Kind of fun.
Okay. Do we have any conversation? Any questions?
Just one, no, another question. This is part of the master plan, correct? For
Yes.
Parks and Rec, it's been around for a while. And they have, they're now getting good traction on moving things forward. So this is timely to be here and hopefully. it
Yes,
will go
this
through.
will kind of put us on the track for the other feasibility study of
Mhm.
possibly moving to one location, how things should run, where can we improve, where can we, make adjustments. So it's good timing to get this done now so that if we do move forward or as we move forward with the other projects, we'll have a better idea of how things should be structured.
Absolutely. That's all.
Thank you. Our next item is also for Parks and Rec. This is for the lighting at the Union Street complex for the ball fields. We went out to bid initially in March of 2024 with a plan of redoing one field during fiscal year 24 and the other 2 fields during fiscal year 25. We went out to bid. The bids that we received back for just doing one field was above what we had budgeted for available funds at the time. So we put the project on hold. Parks and Rec Department requested additional funding in the fiscal year 25 budget process, which was approved. So we reached back out. It's a very unique type of device, for the lighting. And a small window of available providers. So as opposed to putting out a new bid, we contacted all of the bidders from that initial bid, asked them to provide us updated pricing to replace all 3 fields at once, as opposed to mobilizations, 2 mobilizations. All 3 responded back with quotes that ranged from $912,313 to 979, 643. All three bids that we received are less than the original bids that we received because of taking out one of those mobilization factors. The recommendation is to go with RL Todd and Son. They, for the low bid of 912,312. There is, oops, I thought I put that in there. There is available money.
Yes.
You have, right, you have more than that enough. There's enough in the capital fund to cover that. I wanted to make sure. There's, they had enough budget to approve money to cover that full cost. So it is under budget. We can get all three fields done this year, and they're ready to mobilize, once the weather, is favorable. So we're looking forward to looking for approval to move forward. Where this is well over the established limit, it will go to full council for next week.
Councilor Dean?
I just had a question as to the lifespan of these lights. What are we looking at?
I'm gonna
for
bring up
replacement?
Tracy Willett, Parks and Rec Director. I'm sure our current ones have outlived their life, but
That is correct. Thank you. Tracy Willett, Parks and Recreation Director. I would anticipate at least a 30 to the year plus lifespan of these. So it will certainly, so all of us here, for sure. To reference the finance director's comment, the current system was installed in 1989. So we should get more than a good lifespan out of these. And there'll be LED fixtures, so they will realize some electrical savings as well.
Do I have a motion to approve the funding for this project?
I'm not on.
I'll make a motion to approve the funding.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
right, it's all, everything's in this corner.
You gotta share it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So
Thank you.
this will be in full council next week. Our next item is aggregate materials for Public Works. We did go out to bid for this. We received 7 bids. When we do go out to bid for aggregate materials, for those who may not know what that is loam, that is crushed rock, sand, gravel, that Public Works uses for various projects. When we go out to bid for these types of things, we have the ability to split the bid among multiple vendors. We like to get the lowest price for each particular item that we think we're going to buy. In this particular case, essentially the low bidders were between 2 companies. Lee's Concrete was the low bidder on 7 of the 11 items that we proposed. And the other 4 items, Sargent Corporation was the low bidder. So we're looking for approval to move forward with both of them. This would be a 3-year contract. The estimated contract for Lee's Concrete, we do not buy everything that we put in there. We put in estimated usage. So what I put in for an estimated cost is assuming we bought everything, even though we know that we probably won't. So the high estimated cost for Lee's Concrete would be about $73,950 a year. Sargent would be $21,800. Even over a 3-year contract, that puts it below the council threshold, so this would not need to go to full council. But we're looking for approval tonight for Public Works to move forward with contracts with both Lee's Concrete and Sargent Corporation.
Any questions? I have one, where we don't know the total cost with, the price of materials that can go up, especially substantially now, depending on how things, play with the tariffs. Do we have any idea what percentage that could be?
Well, this would lock them into these prices for the 3-year
For
contract.
3 years?
So we will not,
They'd be
right,
locked
so
in. Okay.
if they wanted to come back and make a modification, we would have to negotiate that with
Okay,
the
that
city.
could be-
But as what their bid was, they would lock in these prices for 3 years.
Okay, very good.
Only on the quantity requested, right? So if we
Yeah,
wanted
right.
more, we'd have to go
If
back.
we
and-
wanted more than that, we may need to have a discussion with them. Talking with the Public Works Director, we don't anticipate that we would go over those quantities.
Do I have a motion
So
to?
moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is for 2 boilers at 138 Main Avenue, which is known as Building 96 at the airport. We did go out to bid. We received 2 quotes. One was from a local company, FW Webb, for a total of $50,611.76. The other bid was from a company out of Florida for $192,000. We assume the vast difference in price would be for mobilization as well as shipping costs from Florida. So staff is recommending going with the low bidder, FW Webb, for 2 boilers. The boilers themselves come to $40,516. The additional $10,000 is various other material costs and delivery costs that bring the total to $50,611. They had budgeted in their capital budget $65,000 for this process. This is the purchase of just the boilers themselves. Our own staff will be installing the boilers once they receive, because we have qualified staff at the airport to do that.
Any questions? Do I have a motion to grant the bid to FWF?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is an order. This typically is something that wouldn't necessarily know to committee, but I put it on here anyway. This was received a donation from Carrot Top Corporation for $500 to assist with the supplies for the Milk and Cookies Postpartum and Lactation Support Group. What we do during the annual budget resolve is this money, any donations that are under a certain dollar amount are automatically appropriated by the council, but they still require formal action to accept the money. So this order would be on next week's council agenda to formally accept the donation and put it toward the purpose of that. So this is just a committee action to move this forward to the full council.
Make a motion.
Second.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. And our next item is, this is a referral. It went to first reading at the last council meeting. This is to accept $96,247 in fiscal year 2004 Homeland Security Grant funding that would assist the police and fire department. They applied, there was 2 different council orders that authorized them to apply for this grant funding. One was in the amount of $35,000 for an unmanned aerial system, and the other one was for $91,247 to assist in various divisions, the explosive ordnance disposal, special response team, mobile command vehicle, as well as technical rescue. Everything was approved that we had requested except for the $30,000 in the technical rescue division. That was not approved. They didn't it didn't like what our proposal was at the time. So this, and that happens with grant applications. So this order would be again for second reading at the full council next week to accept $96,247 in Homeland Security grant for the police and fire departments.
Can I have a motion to accept the Homeland Security grant?
And second.
Okay, very good.
Thank you. And our last item tonight is an assessor's update. Our assessor Phil Drew will come to the table and we'll go on from there.
Thank you, Phil Drew, City Assessor. We tried a couple times to get before you, but one was illness and one was timing, but I'm thankful here now. I'm going to provide you an update on something that's 16 pages, and I'm going to use as few numbers as possible. So I think I'd like to start a little differently. So really my memo talks about the revaluation process and assessment changes and tax implications for Bangor property owners for April 1st, 2025. And there are a few takeaways from this lengthy document. The one is market value versus assessment. The assessor's office bases property valuations on real estate sales data, ensuring that the values stay in line with current market conditions. If your property's value has changed, it may be due to shifts in the local market or neighborhood changes. Oftentimes we heard something like location, that still impacts our market values in town. So we have the difference between a statistical and a full revaluation. So a statistical revaluation, like the one planned for 2025, involves adjusting assessed values based upon trends in the market without physically inspecting every property. In contrast, a full revaluation, like the one scheduled for 2026, will require those on-site inspections to collect current data that hasn't been done across the city since the late 1980s. So the impact of the statistical revaluation, while property values may increase after the revaluation, this doesn't necessarily mean higher taxes. The total tax levy, the total amount needed to fund Bangor schools, the city share of Penobscot County budgets, essentially remains the same regardless of the revaluation numbers on the property side. Obviously, the mill rate will adjust based upon the overall value increase in the city from one year to the next. The memo covers tax relief programs. There are several programs available for property owners. We know them as homestead, veteran exemption, those with disabilities like blind. Those can all help reduce the taxable value of properties. And appealing your assessment, if you disagree with the property's assessed value, you can request an informal review by my office. And if you're still dissatisfied, there is a formal appeal process that all of us have each year. And property type and neighborhood adjustments, some neighborhoods will see larger adjustments than others due to differences in that market activity. This could mean varying percentage increases depending on the property type or neighborhood. So for us, KRT Appraisal, they're handling the data collection for the full revaluation, and inspections are ongoing across the city. I think I saw one data collector on Park Street behind City Hall. So they're moving from essentially west to east over by the golf course. And I think most of the data collectors are doing the properties, and some of them have come as far as City Hall. So they're making pretty good progress. So my memo is to ensure that there's a fair distribution of property taxes, even though there's going to be variance in property assessments, depending upon location, market trends, and property type. If you're a property owner, keeping track of the changes and exploring the tax relief programs could be helpful. So I only really want to cover 7 pages with key numbers from the memo. And really the first one was the memo is longer than in the past because what I tried to do is incorporate some of their frequently asked questions so that when a broad audience looks at it and it's posted on the website, they can kind of get some context behind, why these numbers, why this process. So I've tried to do that within the document. And I think the first thing I do report to you each year is really what was the percentage increase in the median home price in Penobscot County from 23 to 24. And I think it was about 9.62%. So this is going to be an indication that, there's going to have to be some change in Bangor. And we've made those changes. So pretty much on the real estate side, the overall percentage increase will be about 6.85. So clearly some will be have very little change in values. Some will change more. Overall, there's about a $246 million increase in the value of the city, of which 28 million comes from new constructions. So new homes, new commercial properties, new solar arrays that haven't applied yet for exemptions, which they're eligible to do. So that will be helpful for Debbie and David in finance to try to look at, what's the increase from new construction versus the overall change. That's kind of it will be a shifting depending upon where you're located. And of course, each year when we do our analysis on page 3, we take 2024 values, then we make adjustments by property type where necessary, then by neighborhood, and that arrives at our revised values. And we do a lot of math and study during that process. And last year, we went through that process, and there were a few neighborhoods that went up around 40% in value. And we heard from those individuals. And it is rather difficult to adjust to that percentage increase. So I've tried to lessen the change. And on page 4, we see that the target ratio will be between 91 and 92% of market value. That will keep us in compliance with the state for all the full exemptions. But the big number is basically that does limit the largest percentage increase to about 22%. So some still have fairly significant change. But I have definitely softened the blow for certain neighborhoods and property types that could have been higher.
Ask a question.
Yeah.
What types of neighborhoods are the ones that are seeing the largest increase?
So when we go to page 7, so this outlines the specific neighborhood adjustment. So they get a property type adjustment. So single family was going to get about a 2% property type adjustment. And then they would get a neighborhood adjustment. And like small multifamily, they would get a property type adjustment and a neighborhood adjustment. So I think the first one is really like Bangor Gardens. So that one just has a 3% neighborhood adjustment. And they're 2% neighborhood adjustment, so they get about a 5% adjustment. And then if we look at the bottom of that report, Yale, Juniper, Howard, Dartmouth, so they're getting a neighborhood adjustment of about 11%. So they get a 2% and 11, so they're about 13% overall. And these are all borne out by the studies of the sales in the neighborhood. And what the adjustment needed to be. And then if we do see a little further up, when we look at Birch Hill Mobile Home Park, Holiday Park, so they did need to go up 14% to try to keep pace with the current values of mobile homes, which seems to be extraordinary. But this lays it out for you by neighborhood on that adjustment. Now, when I come back to you in June, with that, I'll have all the maps that will outline the same changes that I make available online for the public. Yep. With our ratio studies, that's where we do the mathematical analysis of making the least amount of adjustment that's deemed necessary. But we can see that, you know, there are 8,135 properties in the neighborhoods getting the neighborhood specific adjustment. Now, one of the neighborhoods that did go up 40% last year, which was Cortland Circle, excuse me. Yes, Cortland Circle, which is behind Orchard Hills. So they did go up 40%. But my newest board member to join the Board of Assessment and Review, he was someone that did question it last year. And I was pleased to say that with that adjustment, there was really no adjustment necessary this year. So definitely pleased about that, but because the sales indicated that we were about right for that neighborhood, and I'm sure we made up for that in one big lump sum last year. That is definitely hard to it's hard to see coming.
Question. Land versus buildings increase. How do you do the land increase? Specifically, and then how do you do the building increase? Or change when you value? You're not valuing the land, you're valuing it by neighborhood? Are you valuing it one sweep? over
Right,
the
by
whole city?
neighborhood also.
By neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the buildings are by, logically, if we're 100% valuation, no matter where your building is in the city, it should be valued the same. Is that correct? or
So
is that
the property
incorrect?
type adjustment just affects the building value, and then the neighborhood adjustment affects both land and building.
I'm confused. You're saying so you adjust the property value twice? You're doing two
Right,
adjustments
it's
to
a
the property
two-step
value?
process.
But one for the building.
Adjust it once by property type. And then rerun the ratios and study them again. And see which ones were still below 90% ratio. Or above 100%. And then calculate an appropriate land and building adjustment by neighborhood.
And to clarify, Drew, what is the state minimum requirement for that ratio? Is it 92 or is it 91 or
It's 91.
91? Okay.
So once it drops below 91, then we're supposed to start adjusting other property types.
Thank you.
And I think on page 10, I think this is a telling page, because if we look at unsold properties in Bangor, so if it's a single unit, the April 1st, 2025 value will be the median ratio about 239,000. Whereas in the group of sales, it was 280,000. 4-unit properties, the median assessed value 326,000, whereas the 7 sales, they were 465,000. So to the right of that is the median sale price per unit. And I would say that for 2-unit and 3-unit and 4-unit multi-units, I would say this is the first year that they've all been consistently above 100,000 per unit at the median value. So, and for our counselor, who's often asked me in the past, the difference between valuing the same size single family unit and a 2-unit of the same exact size, this would be the first year that it's pretty much higher across the city for the 2-unit. Not much, but versus the single family, but finally the market is.
So it's now time to change my zoning.
So there, there has been significant change. And I think at the council meeting the other night, someone had asked a question. And the question pertained to. One of the questions was, is the city choosing now at the peak of the market to do the revaluation? And I guess my response to that would be, well, if you asked me 3 years ago whether it was the peak of the market, I would say it's got to be. And then the same 2 years ago, it's got to be. And then the last year, you think, well, it's got to be. But I've stopped trying to forecast property values into the future because I've been consistently wrong. So better to just use the data and make the adjustments. So each year as a check, I do look at listings, and I looked at listings on December 2024, and we grouped them by property type. And even with the adjusted values that we're proposing, commercial, industrial, 16 listings, the listed price was just, the assessment was 60% of the listed price. So they're looking for big dollars for those properties. Condo and PUD were 5 listings. They were about 90%. So they're just below our target. Single family, there were 66 listings. They're really still just 84%. So we didn't quite get there. And then 2 to 4 residence properties, there were 15, and they were at 78%. So even with the large multifamily adjustments that I'm proposing, we're still below market. So it seems to me that they're reasonable. It's not always the case when the tax bill comes out. Because, you know, there's some properties changing 2%, and then there are some properties changing 20%. So there's a wide range in tax change. But hopefully everybody knows that we studied the sales and we're trying to be as responsive as possible on the valuations, both commercial, industrial, and residential. And I would say we can't quite estimate the mill rate for the upcoming year because, you know, we don't have the budgets for FY 26. So those are really unknown at this time, but it's the tax rate has been dropping over the last 6 years, but not as fast as the growth in values. So one is definitely greater than the other. So usually the net impact is a tax increase over time. And on KRT appraisal, so I will have the new numbers at the end of this month. So about March 1st, they will give me the updated the numbers on the number of properties measured, where they got inside, number of properties where information was provided by the owner at the door. So it looks like in the original numbers, they've satisfied or come to some conclusion on about 39% of the properties, and then 61%. Nobody, they might have measured the exterior, but they didn't get information from the property owner at the door. But in a couple months, all those individuals will get a letter asking them if they want the data collector to come at a particular day and time that's convenient for them to do any interior data collection or collection from the property owner. And that's all I wanted to cover
Well, I'd
in
like to,
brief.
I'd just like to, mention, I did a little bit of stats after I got your report the other day, and in 2005 so far, we've had 23 sales, and they are, 283 last year. This was just Bangor, not out of Penobscot County. And it looked like they were, you know, we're going up slightly, but there does seem to be a leveling, hopefully, like you said, it's hard to predict. But I think from the 2023, where the average residential sale price in Bangor was about 271, and in 2024 it was about 280. So there was a slight difference. So I think we're kind of stabilizing, and this year so far, it's about 283. So I think we're starting to level off, hopefully.
Yep.
And right now we have a very active early market. We have 55 just in Bangor houses on the market, and 40 under contract, and 15 that have closed. And we seem to be pretty consistent around that 280 so far this year. So, so I think that your data is very good with us being pretty much, probably even realistically, a little bit below the market value.
Yeah.
And from 2021, when our average price was about 200,000, we're up significantly, 40% on average.
And just a quick note on the mobile homes, they were at 78% of market value. What I did this year was I divided the group. Properties that I could clearly see were listed with a broker or agent and exposed to the market, and those that weren't. And that 78% is just the properties that were listed and exposed to everybody in the world online. And so those did very well in the sale prices versus those that weren't listed. there was a stark difference between the two. So if I had included those properties that were not listed and not apparently exposed to the market, and maybe one person knew the other, or you had to drive through the park and that was the only way to see the listing. There was, those ratios would have been much closer to 100%. But I could see the stark difference between those two groups.
The question that has been asked to me a lot by the people, the residents, if we see a 20 or $25 million increase in our tax, was that around the figure of the tax valuation approximately when this is done?
Oh, like new construction,
Yeah,
28 million.
28 million in new construction. And how much more money in the residential reassessment would be added to that as an increase in taxable monies coming in?
So there's 28 million of new construction, so that means it's about 216 million of just the adjustments, the market adjustments. And clearly, most of those are leading, the bigger adjustments are to some residential properties in certain neighborhoods and multifamily.
So this increase in taxable income to the city will be applied back. It's not like we're gonna have a lot of extra money to do more things. It's gonna be applied back to decrease the mill rate, correct? Plus take care of the budget that we have already projected for 2025.
Well, these are the proposed values, and however the budgets are developed,
Right.
that will really help us determine the mill
You see what
rate.
the question is.
Right, this isn't
Yeah.
necessarily additional money to the city.
Exactly.
It's additional value, that
Evaluation.
taxable value. So
Yeah.
as we put the budget together, we'll have our, proposed expenses, we'll have our normal non-tax revenue. And then there's the difference, which is made up with the tax rate. Just because there's that much value doesn't mean that we're going to have
Right.
all of this excess cash coming in.
Yeah.
Because not everybody necessarily is going to see that. It still may result in, depending on where we fall with expenses and other non-tax revenues, there still may be an increase to the taxpayer. But we attempt to mitigate that as best we
Right.
can with the
As
council
you-
workshops as we work through the process.
It's a common question. Just thank you.
Quick question. Valuation always confuses me, so let me give you an example and you tell me how you take care of it. Say on the same street for 3 houses, 2 are valued at 400,000 and one's valued at 200,000. All 3 of them sell in the same year. 2 at 400,000 sell for 600,000. One valued at 200,000 sells for 150,000. What's the valuation on the 3 houses?
So the first thing we do is, we take a look at the size of the neighborhood. And let's say that there are 200 homes.
No, there are only 3 homes in this. I made it easy for you.
It's unrealistic, but,
Not really.
but I don't have an answer for that.
Okay.
But I can tell you that, in a neighborhood, we generally look for 3 to 4% of the homes in that neighborhood to sell. And we think that's a reasonable number to
Yeah.
give us an indication of direction of value.
Well, this neighborhood, they all happen to have 40 acres of land each one, and it's on a dead end street, so what would you do in this case? I'm just trying to get some sense of how you determine valuation. Because if you have 3 identical houses at two different appraised two different values.
Yep.
And they sell at 2 different prices considerably different.
Yep.
You certainly aren't going to assess them at all the same price.
So the first question I would have on the one that sold, you said there were 3 identical.
Yep.
So the one that sold low, is there some unusual circumstance
was
why
Included
that
for
property
condition,
sold?
it was never updated.
Was it not listed with the broker?
All 3 sold to the
Oh.
same person.
So they're not identical.
Well, they're identical, yes, but
Oh.
you don't take into consideration that though, do you? Condition you don't do every year.
No.
Okay,
When we've been to the property, we'll update the condition and that holds until the next time we visit the property or the revaluation.
Right, so if it had, in our instance, if it's been what, 20-some years since we've had a revaluation, if you hadn't visited the property, you wouldn't know the condition, comparative conditions of three. I'm just trying to find out why we don't visit the properties more often.
That's really a function of staffing. And then once the revaluation is completed, then it's at that time that you can set up a schedule of trying to go to maybe 20 to 25% of the properties each year. Drive up, take a look at the properties, see if there are any
Isn't that a requirement of the
material
state,
changes.
the 20 to 25% revisiting a year?
The state has a statute that talks about having a revaluation every 10 years. As well as going out and doing periodic inspections. But it's always a function of budget and staffing.
Maybe we can follow up with any other questions by email or give you a call, or is there anything else that we have
Yeah.
tonight? Any other questions?
Just one really quick, how are the people on the ground? Like, have they been receiving very well by locals, or have there been any issues that we need to be concerned of?
No, ART, their field organizer, basically comes in every day, checks in, see if anybody has called with any concerns. If someone has called during the week, we contact the office in Massachusetts, and they will relay the information to us. But the team is assembling here in the parking lot each day just before 9 o'clock. They organize their day, and then they go out and do as many inspections as they can. I mean, I think the biggest issue at this point really is someone knocking on the door, and most of us are kind of keen on just not answering. And then they look, and there's someone walking around the outside with their vest on.
Then they really don't answer.
They either don't answer or they come out and they're upset. But then when they see what's being worn, they're like, oh yeah, I got that postcard. I was notified that you'd be coming around. And then they have a conversation with them to do an inspection or give information at the door, or you get off my property. And if they get that, then they just leave and do the estimate from the street, combined with the property data that we already have on file.
Thank you very much, Phil.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
Any other questions? Thank you, Phil.
Thank you very much.
Good report, very interesting. Thank you.
So that was everything we had on the agenda tonight. Quick update on the audit. We were working through it. We received some updated questions from the auditors on Tuesday. We're working through those, but our goal, which we should be able to do, is get the auditors what we consider our full complete package by the end of the week. And then that will put it into their hands to do their final reviews and additional testing. So we are getting there. The questions that we got yesterday were sort of unexpected. We didn't realize that they were still pulling some invoices out of the system and had some additional questions. It all relates around to it's one of the new pronouncements, which relates to subscription-based IT software. We have a lot more than what we thought we had, scattered throughout the department. Some departments have done their own things over the years that relate specifically to Parks and Rec, or specifically to the fleet department or the airport. So they're pulling those invoices to find out if it's really a long-term type contractual obligation of the city, most of them, what we're finding is they're just year-to-year subscriptions that we've been doing for years, but now we have to address that and try to pull out those old records and find those contracts that were signed years ago to determine exactly what the relationship is. So we're working through those. We got most of those taken care of today. There's still a few that we're waiting for some information on. And we're updating the financial statements to incorporate those. That, from our perspective, is the last piece, and we should be able to get that off to them this week, assuming nothing falls apart. So that is all I have.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone have some questions or anything? Not?